So, Jordan, one of the things that you talk about in the book, which is, I think, really wonderful, and I hadn't heard you talk about it a lot before. You've done it in some of your lectures, but it hasn't been the main theme, is sort of the relationship question. How do you maintain romance in your relationship? And as a dude who's been married for almost 13 years at this point, I can say that, it is very, very good advice. I mean, the amount of work that has to go into a relationship to keep a relationship functioning at a high level is tremendous. And that's not what you are sold in the media. What you're sold in the media is, number one, the happily ever after wedding ending. But even that is now hackneyed. Now the idea is that there is no happily ever after, that basically you're a fool if you get married, and that true happiness lies in changing partners on a fairly routine basis. But that's not the case that you make at all. You make the case that happiness is going to lie, and fulfillment, more importantly, is going to lie in the hard work of putting romance into your relationship. And people, I think, when they get into this thing, they don't know how much work it is to even do the sort of thing where you have to plan romance into your life, particularly after you have kids. It's a reality.
I had a lot of clinical experience, and I had men in my practice who were very successful, serially sexually active. And it didn't work for them very well. Now, I would say very forthrightly, if I had two men and all other things being equal, one was capable of serial sexual relationships and was attractive enough to manage that, and the other wasn't, that the person who managed to do that is more successful. I believe that. So if you're abstinent because you're incapable, that is not a virtue. But you can't divorce something as miraculous as sexuality from your life. How are you going to do that? Well, you can trivialize it. It's nothing. Well, okay. Well, then you have nothing. So good luck with that. You're going to take one of the deepest sources of meaning that's available to you and turn it into nothing. Well, that's its own punishment. Well, so then you integrate it into your life. Well, what do you want for your life? Do you want to be, what is it that you want from sex? Do you want intimacy? Do you want closeness? Do you even want the experience to be of high quality? Do you want the person to pay attention to you? Well, they're going to have to care for you. Lust will get you somewhere, and it's not nothing, but it's by no means everything. And everyone knows this. People are lonely. They need someone to communicate with, and they need someone to tie themselves together with, so their lives make a rope. They need someone to communicate with when times are good and to share their triumphs, and they need someone to share their catastrophes, and they need a framework that's stable so that they can have children. And well, why would you have children? It's like, that's a stupid question. It's like, well, what else are you going to do? There aren't that many things that make up your life. And intimate relationships, that's 20% of your life or 30% of your life. Children, that's 20% of your life. Now, you can get away with neither of those, but you better have a walloping career or a tremendous aptitude at something creative and remarkable. And maybe you can do that. Maybe that'll be enough for you. But I've seen that unidimensionality work out well and very, 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 very rarely. So, and you have children because you'll never have the opportunity in your life to have as high quality a relationship with anyone as you could potentially have with your child. So you're going to forego that? Well, you can, but what's left for you then? All this cynicism, it's aimed against blind obedience. It's like, fair enough, okay? So I would take a cynic over someone who's blindly obedient any day, especially a cynic who was once blindly obedient, because at least then they had managed that. But if you're really cynical, you move past cynicism. You doubt your doubt, and you start to notice, and then you engage in your life. And so young people are being sold a shoddy bill of goods. Even if you're successful at what you pursue, say serial sexual satisfaction, Tinder, you're a hot Tinder item. It's like, well, if you're a male and you're attractive and you have an endless array of willing females, it's a gateway to psychopathy as far as I'm concerned. because you have to divorce your sexuality from the humanity of the people that you're engaged with sexually. Well, all that's going to do is make you hard and bitter. And I wouldn't recommend it. So, and it's not casual moralizing. You know, I'm not suggesting that naive abstinence is the right solution. But we're not doing a good job, Ben, of communicating the fundamental values of life to our young people. I got a story to tell you, man. I talked to this woman this week, Yeonmi Park, and she wrote a book called In Order to Live. She's an escapee from North Korea. And like, she had quite the life, man. Like, starvation, then slavery. That kind of sums up her life. She had to sell her own mother, whom she loved. I mean, you just think about that for like 15 minutes and see where it gets you. And she was literally a slave in China. And she struggled through all that, ended up in South Korea and went to a South Korean university. She did all her education in 1 year. Elementary, junior high, and high school in 1 year. Passed the GED and got into a competitive South Korean university. It's like, this is quite the girl. And her book, it wraps up in 2015. So I asked her about what's happened in recent years. She went to Columbia University. So imagine this girl struggles out of North Korea and slavery and pursues her education and gets to go to an Ivy League school in New York. It's like the pinnacle of her ambition. She was drastically affected by George Orwell's Animal Farm when she was in South Korea. It's one of the first classic books she read, and that's what made her decide to write and to speak. So she can understand the value of the humanities, like virtually no one else can. She went to Columbia. I said, well, how was that? She said, it was a complete waste of time and money. And I said, well, wait a second. You can't really mean that. Surely, in your 4 years studying humanities at Columbia, you must have had one professor or one course that spoke to you, you know, the way that the books that you were reading spoke to you, that the person made the attempt to push past the limitations of the institution and mentored you. She mentioned one human biology class where she learned about evolution, but said that that was all twisted by political correctness near the end. And that was all she could muster up for 4 years of. She said that she felt just about as stymied in her freedom of speech at Columbia University studying humanities as she did in bloody North Korea. That's what we're doing to our young people. It's so appalling. So appalling. There's so much that people can be offered. This richness of the past, so much that's desperately necessary. This isn't optional. You know, the idea that man does not live by bread alone. That's not religious claptrap.
Thank you for tuning in to the Daily Wire, one of the fastest growing conservative media outlets in the country. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of our content.